War memorials, like most monuments, serve to help shape the collective identity of its intended audience. Monuments tell us of our history, of our creation, and our values. In seeking to unite our imaginations, our foundations, they seek to unite us. The issue is not of convincing the audience, say, that they are American, but in convincing us of what it means to be American, or at least whatever those responsible for the erection of a monument want us to believe that means. We see this often in the erection and in the dismantling of monuments. When something happens or someone lives and we feel it must or they must be proudly remembered, we put up monuments and statues and museums. We deify moments and set them as standards, and if that symbolic standard becomes unbearable, unable to be identified with, we tear it down. War memorials in particular are typically narrowly framed despite their service as totems of our empathy and sympathy as points of pride for a people. In framing it as remembering their sacrifice, we create martyrs of millions, and we become those they died for. Once that is done, it's hard not to identify with the person who willingly gave their life for us. We call these people heroes, and that's why, I argue, Marisol Escobar's Merchant Mariners Memorial in Battery Park stands as an anti-monument. The mediums, placement, and form of the memorial work to evoke emotions of sorrow and regret in the audience that helps us to realize that dying for one's country is rarely as noble as most war monuments make it appear to be. And though we may know that, just as this monument, we tend to place that truth out of sight. The memorial sits at the end of a walled-off pier on the southern tip of Manhattan, and is a depiction of three horror-stricken men on a pointedly minimalist composition of a sinking lifeboat, with a fourth man reaching up for his life from the waters of the Hudson below. Unlike most war monuments, this memorial does not commemorate those who enlisted into military service. It remembers those merchant marines, who were private citizen mariners who often provide transport and logistical support to our nation's navy and private and foreign ships who have died during all of America's wars. And these are not those who willingly march to the front lines. They're not the doughboy or the victorious general whom we are meant to give our stalwart support. These are those forgotten by their nation, and they're depicted as they likely died. The man on his knees, staring out at the audience in quiet resignation to his fate, neither screaming nor trying to help his overboard friend, nor trying to keep the lifeboat from sinking. The standing man first appears to be calling out for help from the audience, but if you look carefully, you can see he's trapped in the process of lowering his hands after calling out, after realizing that no help is coming. The man pulling up the overboard mariner is still in the relative safety of the sinking boat. He has not heroically jumped overboard to haul the mariner in, or devised some clever plan to save him. He's doing the best one can expect from a person actually in that situation. And he's stuck with his arm reaching out, eyes cast down on the drowning man, and he's forced to watch how quickly time erodes our memory, as each day the tide washes a little more of the drowning man away. The fourth man, then, establishes the age value of the work. He is the most apparent representation of the terror and the danger of the situation, and at the times of day when only his hand reaches out from the water, he is the most apparently dead one of the four. His corrosion, then, is a testament to the idea that no matter the monuments we build, eventually we forget our dead. Over time, his features have washed away to make him unidentifiable, unlike the other three who still have the faces to make identification remotely possible. In more time, he'll wash away to nothing. Though the ones on the boat still have clear features, one is almost unable to place them into a historical time period. Their clothing lacks any historical markers besides a vague life jacket, and that ambiguity works in tandem with the extremely essential concrete boat to make this a memorial to merchant marines who have died in all of our wars. That historical ambiguity makes this memorial inclusive in that sense, but also works to remind us that throughout our history people have died because we, for any number of good or bad reasons, decided to go to war, and then we have the audacity to validate their suffering by branding them martyrs and heroes. This memorial doesn't commemorate our heroes. It asks us if we should continue to demand that our children become them. All this, I believe, is obvious if one spends time with the memorial. From the allotted viewing area across the narrow stretch of water where a dedication plaque rests. Without reading that plaque, which sits slightly above ground level on the opposite side of a fence, this monument is largely unidentifiable. From the promenade behind the pier, one cannot make out the scene. A person cannot even see the monument from behind the strand of trees behind the viewing area of the promenade. In fact, beyond about 20 feet from the pier, the whole scene is almost invisible thanks to a large building behind the pier, that strand of trees, and its placement at the tip of the island. Staring at the Merchant Mariner's Memorial, the heavy and remorseful emotional response is undeniable, made more so by the fact that the pier is fenced off. Children cannot slide down the careening concrete lifeboat. Tourists cannot take pictures sitting on the mariner's shoulders. But that same factor which emblazons the solemnity of the scene is but a single facet in how the environment bars us from engaging with this monument. Its invisibility beyond its allocated viewing area is evidence to how we are systemically denied access to the perspective that acknowledges the ignobility of the actual moment one dies for their country. In evoking this sentiment and emotions blatantly contrary from those typically associated with war commemorations, this memorial comes to stand as an anti-monument.